Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the sandals of a battle-worn samurai. Imagine the distant clang of steel still echoing in your ears. There's sweat on your brow, dust in your teeth, and a faint sting on your shoulder where someone almost got lucky with a spear. You're trudging along a winding forest path, the smell of crushed pine needles and dried blood tangled together in the summer air. And even though you survived the skirmish, your thighs are already negotiating a strike deal against stairs. The truth is, you probably wouldn't survive this life. But don't worry, you won't have to. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time you're listening. I love seeing where and when you tune in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've made it home. Or rather, back to your lord's estate, which technically isn't home unless you've achieved some kind of miracle and married into land. You're still wearing your full armor, and yes, it's as heavy and miserable as you'd imagine. More than 60 pounds of iron, silk, lacquer, and what might be horse sweat. It pinches behind the knees, itches around your collarbone, and clunks when you so much as exhale. Your hands smell like a mix of rope and rust, and you have precisely one goal: stop being a warrior for a few hours. It starts with the arrival. The outer gates slide open, and inside the compound is a flurry of motion. A low-ranking retainer nods. A stable boy glances at you, sees your state, and promptly pretends to focus on something else. No one wants to talk to a samurai who looks like a thundercloud wrapped in armor. Inside the main hall, you bow, more out of habit than reverence. Your daimyo isn't present, thankfully, which means you don't have to worry about presenting trophies, scars, or reciting the tactical brilliance of how you didn't die. You can skip that part tonight. First things first, unstrapping the helmet. As you gently lift it off, you realize just how soaked the lining is. Your hair is flattened in unfortunate directions, and a tiny piece of leaf is somehow stuck to your temple. You try to shake it off without looking obvious. Then come the shoulder guards, those awkward flaps that make doors seem narrower than they are. Your breathing deepens as the weight reduces piece by piece. It's a reverse transformation. From terrifying warrior to sweaty, slightly cranky man who really just wants to sit down and maybe snack on a pickled plum. There's a ritualistic cadence to this. Loosening the cords, sliding off the breastplate, unclipping the arm guards. You've done it so many times your fingers move without conscious thought. But today you're moving slower. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the arrow graze near your ribs that you didn't tell anyone about. You'll poke at it later with a wince and a muttered curse. Off go the thigh plates and shin guards, finally giving your knees some semblance of a future. And then, oh sweet relief, the underrobe. It's damp, it's gross, but it's off. You're down to your fundoshi, which is like the historical cousin of a Speedo, and for a moment, you just sit there, breathing, feeling the breeze. That moment doesn't last long. A page arrives bowing so deeply he practically sniffs the floor. "The bath is ready," he says. Of course it is. Samurai were many things, but one stereotype that holds shockingly true: they were obsessed with cleanliness. Bathing wasn't optional. Even after a day of blood and chaos, or maybe especially then, the idea of soaking in scalding water felt like salvation. It was physical relief, mental reset, and a mild form of flexing if you happened to share the bath with others. And yes, you'd be sharing. Communal bathing wasn't just about getting clean. It was about not being the smelly guy. And worse, far worse, it was about not being the samurai who left blood in the bath. That was the fast track to social exile and at least 3 layers of passive-aggressive side-eye. You shuffle toward the bathhouse, sandals slapping on polished wooden floors. Your footsteps echo, but everything else is hushed. A few other warriors are already inside, towels draped over shoulders, hair tied up. You nod, they nod. No one speaks yet. This is not the time for loud chatter. This is the sacred moment where each man becomes slightly less disgusting. The air inside the bathhouse is humid, infused with cedar and faint ash. You rinse first, always rinse, scrubbing off battlefield residue like shame, silently swearing you'll never wear that much armor again. You absolutely will. The bath itself is deep, heated by a fire in the next room. You step in slowly, every inch of you protesting. But when you're finally submerged, shoulders under the water, something clicks into place. You are no longer a samurai. You are now just a very sore man in hot water, trying not to think too hard. Historians still argue whether these communal baths served as informal council chambers. Did strategy get discussed? Did alliances get whispered between steam clouds? There's no consensus, but tonight, no one's strategizing. Someone farts, no one reacts. That's the social contract. There's a small bucket of yuzu fruits floating in one corner. The scent is citrusy, distracting. It's the little things that make this feel less like a war and more like life. One samurai near you mumbles something about a ghost he saw last week. Another groans and closes his eyes. You sink in deeper, ears underwater, muffled, distant, peaceful. For the first time all day, you're not anticipating movement. You're just existing. And for a samurai who's been dodging arrows, that's borderline luxurious. Your stomach growls. Food's coming soon, but not before the next ritual. Drying off, changing into something soft, and trying not to think about what tomorrow might bring. You step out of the bath slowly, steam curling around your legs as if reluctant to let you go. The floor is slick but warm beneath your feet. Heated stone, slightly textured, probably cleaned at least 3 times already today by some overworked servant who has never touched a sword and never wants to. You envy him, briefly. Not deeply. Just enough to wonder if rice carrying and mat sweeping might come with fewer neck aches. A soft cotton cloth is handed to you. It's thinner than you'd prefer and barely covers anything. You wrap it anyway because modesty is still a thing, at least until Sack gets involved later. You dry your face, dab behind your ears like your mother taught you, and then shuffle toward the dressing alcove. Here, garments are folded neatly, stacked by color and rank. Yours is somewhere in the middle. Not plain, not lavish. A soft indigo cotton kimono, well worn but not threadbare. You put it on slowly, sleeves first, adjusting the hem with practiced hands. It smells faintly of camphor wood and summer sweat, which is either nostalgic or gross, depending on your mood. Once you're dressed, something strange happens. You stop clanking. It's the first time all day you've moved without the sound of metal brushing metal. No shoulder plates shifting, no leather straps creaking. Just the gentle rustle of cloth, the shuffle of tabi socks on the polished floor. It feels wrong at first, like you've forgotten something crucial. You keep touching your waist out of habit, expecting to feel your daisho, the twin swords. But of course they're elsewhere, respectfully stored, temporarily not your concern. This is the in-between space. You're no longer in battle mode, but not yet in rest. You're soft, robe-clad, suspiciously vulnerable. And honestly, a little itchy. There's something comforting about how everyone else looks equally silly. Warriors you saw cleaving enemies at dawn now shuffle around in bathrobes like grumpy uncles at a family reunion. One guy is clearly wearing his robe backwards and pretending it's intentional. You don't say anything, he might outrank you. You pause near a paper screen, letting yourself breathe. Historians still argue whether samurai relaxation was genuinely restful or just highly performative. Were these rituals truly about peace, or simply about showing you could appear peaceful, even when your muscles ached and your nerves frayed like old bowstring? Probably a bit of both. And speaking of nerves, you have a small task to do, checking in with your superior. Not the daimyo himself, he's upstairs playing Go or napping with one eye open. But one of the higher-ranking retainers, the kind of man whose smile could mean making in anything from well done to, I hope you enjoy sleeping outside. You offer a quick bow. He barely nods. Good sign. You look intact, he says. I feel mostly intact, you reply. He grunts approvingly or dismissively, it's hard to tell with these guys, and waves you off. No further duties tonight, no reports, no demands, just the rest of the evening and your creaky body. You make your way to the smaller lounge area. This is where the minor magic happens. The floor is lined with woven tatami mats, soft and faintly grassy smelling. There's a low table near the wall with a lacquer tray of pickled radish slices and dried squid sticks, the samurai version of midnight popcorn. Incense burns lazily in the corner, its smoke curling up like a question you don't need to answer. The room is dim, just one oil lamp and the moon slipping through rice paper windows. You take a seat, cross-legged, which sounds dignified but mostly just hurts. Now comes the silence, the kind you never got on the battlefield, never got while traveling in caravans or guarding some bridge no one cared about. This is the hush of a world where, for a few hours, no one is trying to kill you. The others are seated too. A few of them are meditating, backs straight, eyes closed, faces like stone statues. You try it. You last 4 seconds before your knees protest. You adjust your posture. Try again. Your stomach rumbles again. Dinner soon, someone mutters without opening their eyes. You nod, though no one sees. The hunger is background noise, like the buzz of summer insects through the paper-thin walls. It doesn't gnaw. It waits. Patient, like everything else in this compound. You breathe in the scent of the incense, earthy and strange, maybe sandalwood, maybe whatever was cheapest this month. A quiet wind brushes against the building, stirring the paper screens. Somewhere outside, a servant calls out, probably chasing a chicken or arguing with a cat. Inside, no one reacts. Stillness is the currency here, and everyone's too tired to spend much of it. There's a fringe rumor you once heard from an older samurai, half drunk and nostalgic, that some lords used to hire poets just to walk around at night whispering verses. Like mobile bedtime soundtracks. You've never seen one. But it sounds nice. Pointless, luxurious, unnecessary. Exactly the kind of thing rich men invent when they've stopped fearing arrows. You think you might drift off sitting up, but just then the clatter of footsteps breaks the quiet. A servant appears, bowing quickly. Evening meal is prepared. About time. You rise with a grunt. Every joint sounds like it's negotiating peace terms. You follow the others, shuffling in a gentle parade of rumpled fabric and half-lidded eyes. No one rushes. Why would they? The air smells like miso and grilled fish. You can almost taste the rice already. Hot, sticky, slightly burned at the edges, the way it clings to the inside of your mouth, just enough to remind you you're still here. Still lucky. Still alive. For now. The dining area is low-lit and spare, a quiet space designed to make everything you eat feel slightly more poetic than it actually is. The air still carries a trace of cedar smoke from the bathhouse and the drifting scent of soy and vinegar, which is now doing questionable things to your already growling stomach. You sit down on a cushion at a long, lacquered table. The surface is so polished you can almost see your face in it, which is unfortunate, given the current state of your eyebrows. Servants move silently around the edges of the room, each one trained in the ancient art of not making eye contact with samurai unless absolutely necessary. They begin placing food in front of you. A small bowl of rice, a piece of grilled mackerel that still seems to be judging you, miso soup with slices of daikon, floating like sleepy clouds, and of course, a tiny dish of pickled vegetables because dinner isn't complete without something that tastes mildly like regret. And you know what? It's perfect. You lift your chopsticks, fingers moving automatically. The rice is steaming, a little sticky. The fish flakes easily. The soup is hot enough to warm your tongue without scalding it. It's not luxury. It's sustenance made reverent through simplicity. Nobody talks much. There's the sound of slurping, the gentle clink of bowls, a single quiet sneeze that causes 4 men to flinch as if a ghost just entered the room. You remember that one battle where a guy sneezed while hiding and gave away the entire ambush? Nobody invites him to dinner anymore. You chew slowly, methodically. This isn't just about food, it's decompression. Each bite is a step further from the chaos of the day and a little closer to feeling like a person again instead of a sword with legs. You glance at the man across from you. He's delicately removing bones from his fish with surgeon like precision. You're impressed. You also make a mental note not to duel him. Too much patience. Historians still argue whether communal meals among samurai were primarily functional or subtly political. Every seating arrangement, every poured cup, every nod possibly sending ripples of hierarchy through the room. But tonight, the vibe is decidedly more, please don't take the last pickled plum than Game of Thrones. Midway through the meal, conversation stirs. Not full-on chatter, just soft comments passed like warm sake from one end of the table to the other. Someone mentions a merchant who tried to sell armor made of lacquered bamboo. Another joke's about starting a band of Ronin who only fight over bad poetry. A third, eyes wide with faux mystery, whispers, "The bathhouse ghost followed me home again." This gets a few smirks. Samurai, it turns out, love ghost stories. You remember hearing one as a boy about a headless warrior who roamed the rice paddies at night, clanging noisily because he kept forgetting to remove his armor before death. There's something deeply satisfying about the idea that even in the afterlife, some people still mess up the basics. You finish your fish and sip the last of your soup. A servant glides past, refilling bowls of tea with barely a sound. It's green tea, bitter and grassy, meant to aid digestion and make you feel slightly more sophisticated than you actually are. Someone across the table starts humming. Not singing, just that faint, absent-minded hum of someone who's full, content, and 2 sips away from a nap. It's contagious. Another picks up the tune, and suddenly there's this soft, wordless melody floating across the table like the steam from your bowl. A servant appears with a tray of sweetened rice cakes. Not many, just enough to signal the evening's winding down. You take one. It's chewy, faintly floral, and the perfect excuse to sit just a little longer. And then, as you're licking a trace of red bean paste from your thumb, someone says it. You hear about the guy who tried to bring a musket into the tea house? Groans, eye rolls, a collective sigh of not again. This is the start of it, the gossip hour. Dinner may be over, but now the meal becomes social. And social is where things get weird. Turns out the guy didn't actually bring a musket into the tea house. He just loudly talked about bringing one, which, in its own way, might be worse. There's something about breaking the peaceful order of tea with the image of gunpowder that deeply offends traditionalists, especially the ones with delicate sensibilities and aggressive eyebrows. You lean back slightly, full and drowsy, the food sitting warm in your belly. The room seems to breathe with you, settling into a slower rhythm. Outside, crickets begin their night performance. You can hear the low creak of wood as the building adjusts to the cooling air. It's a humble, rhythmic sound, like a soft exhale. You remember a peculiar tale one of the older samurai told you years ago, that the sound of settling wood was actually the spirit of the house, stretching its joints. He was dead serious about it, refused to sleep near corners because he believed that's where the house bent its knees. You never told him that corners don't have knees. He probably would have challenged you to a duel. There's laughter now. Someone's exaggerated retelling of a duel turned dance-off is gaining traction. You smile quietly. These stories, half true, half nonsense, are the glue that keeps everyone from fraying apart. You shift slightly on your cushion, joints stiff but manageable, robe a little wrinkled now. Your hand absently finds your tea bowl, it's still warm. A small comfort in a world that doesn't always offer many. And as the plates are cleared and the chatter softens, you realize something beautiful. For a brief, quiet moment, you feel completely human. Not a weapon, not a title, not a part of someone else's legend. Just a man who had dinner, who listened to stories, and who, for once, doesn't have to sleep with one eye open. You shift onto your feet with the grace of a tired ox. knees cracking like old wood under rain. Dinner's done, stomach full, tongue still tasting of roasted fish and bitter tea. The evening is slipping further into night, and you can feel it. Not on a clock, because that's not a thing you own, but in the slowing heartbeat of the estate. Voices are lower, lamps are dimmer. Even the air seems to whisper. Time for something comfortable. You walk slowly through the corridors, robes brushing the floor like a whisper. Everything here is smooth wood, faded murals, sliding doors with paper panels that glow gently from inside. You pass one room where someone's already asleep, sprawled sideways on their futon, snoring gently into oblivion. You envy them deeply. There's a small dressing area at the end of the hallway. No guards, no attendants, just folded garments, brushes, and small trays of grooming tools laid out with monk-like precision. A mirror, polished metal instead of glass, reflects your face in soft distortion. You squint at yourself, uncertain whether the bump on your forehead is from a flying pebble or an ambitious mosquito. You find what you're looking for, a looser kimono, lighter than the one you wore to dinner. This one's made for sleeping or lounging, or maybe both. Soft cotton, dyed a quiet gray that says, I fight for honor but also enjoy sitting. You strip without ceremony and slide into the new robe. It wraps around you like a cloud that's had a rough day too. You pause to brush your hair, an effort somewhere between grooming and wishful thinking. You drag a carved comb through thick, tangled strands, pulling out a few leaves, one twig, and the vague memory of that tree you rolled under during the skirmish earlier. The comb snags once, twice. You wince. The hair wins. Historians still argue whether samurai truly cared about appearance in their private hours. Writings suggest cleanliness and decorum were expected even when no one was looking. But let's be honest, you've seen men pick their ears with arrowheads. So, who knows? You step into the sleeping room, a large open space lined with tatami mats. There are cushions stacked against the wall, neatly folded futons, and a few low stools. A small brazier in the corner glows faintly, not for heat, just for scent. Dried herbs popping quietly in the embers. Lavender, maybe, or something that wishes it were lavender. You drop to the floor beside a mat and lie back. Not all the way, just enough to let your spine decompress for the first time since the afternoon. The tatami mat creaks beneath your weight but holds firm. You stare at the ceiling beams, thick, dark wood, faint spider webs in the corners. The occasional scurrying above is either a mouse or a polite ghost. Either way, they keep to themselves. A nearby samurai is already laying out his bed, puffing up his futon like it's a luxury goose-down mattress. Another sits cross-legged, eyes closed, muttering what sounds like either a mantra or a complaint about his in-laws. You can't tell, and you're not about to ask. A young page enters with a tray, small brown ceramic bottles of evening tea. You sit up just enough to accept yours with a nod. It's barley tea, cool and toasty, tasting faintly like roasted wood chips and all the feelings you've avoided today. As you sip, your mind wanders. You remember a night like this, months ago, in a different province. The same cool tea, the same aching legs, the same half-joke someone made about marrying a farm girl and retiring near a river. That guy didn't make it past winter. His armor outlived him by months. You blink slowly, breathing deep. The room smells like bamboo and sleep. Everything feels quieter, even your thoughts. You hear a faint snore. Someone mutters in their sleep. The futon across from you is empty, its owner probably still outside, composing a letter or forgetting they're not invincible. And then you do something rare for a samurai, you stretch. Arms overhead, spine arching, toes flexing like they remember being human. It hurts, just a little. The good kind. The you're still alive kind. You collapse back down, satisfied. You hear the soft click of shamisen strings from somewhere down the hall. Someone's playing it lazily, notes drifting in no particular pattern like thoughts you have when you're only half awake. It doesn't demand your attention, it just exists. Gentle, harmless, a musical sigh. You close your eyes. Not to sleep. Not yet. Just to rest them. The room around you fades into a smear of whispers, creaks, soft music, and breathing. For a while, you don't think about the swords, or the lords, or the awkwardness of having three superiors and none of them being likable. Instead, you think of cloth. Simple, cotton, comforting. A robe that doesn't pinch. Sandals that fit. A room where you don't have to bow or salute or pretend to care about rice taxes. You hear someone shuffle past, footsteps soft on the tatami. They don't look at you. You don't look at them. That's the agreement. In this space, you're invisible. You're just another man with tired bones, cooling tea, and a robe that smells vaguely of cedar and sweat. And that's enough for tonight. The stillness of the room presses gently against your skin, like the weight of a thick blanket you haven't quite pulled over yourself yet. You sit in silence, cross-legged once more, facing a small alcove. Tokonoma, it's called, where a single calligraphy scroll hangs beside a carefully arranged sprig of pine. The scroll reads something poetic, something fleeting, probably about wind or impermanence, or, let's be honest, how miserable it is to hold a horse stance for too long. You're here for the next step in the evening's slow unraveling, seiza and stillness. You assume the formal sitting position, feet tucked beneath your thighs, back straight, hands resting loosely on your knees. And now you meditate, or at least try. You breathe in. The air smells of old paper, pine resin, and faint body odor. Not yours, surprisingly, but someone else in the room who either skipped the bath or defied the towel. It's okay. You're not here to judge. You're here to not think. Which, ironically, requires a lot of thinking. You try to clear your mind, focusing only on your breath. In, outside. In, ow. Your knees aren't thrilled. Your ankles are filing complaints. One of your toes has gone numb. You shift a little, hoping no one notices, though everyone is probably doing the same thing. The only person truly good at this sits in the corner, perfectly still, eyes closed, looking like he's been dead for 20 minutes. You briefly check to make sure he's breathing. He is. Dang it. The room creaks again, either from a breeze or from the walls remembering some ancient secret. There's a small brass bell in the corner. It hasn't rung in years, but it's there to symbolize the fleeting nature of noise, or something equally cryptic and slightly smug. Historians still argue whether the samurai adopted Zen practices because they truly believed in the philosophy, or because it made them look cool in front of Buddhist monks. The truth probably lies somewhere between devotion and aesthetic. You, personally, are just here to keep your superior from asking why you skipped Zazen again. You open your eyes briefly. The candle flame in the room dances. Shadows stretch across the mats. A cricket chirps from somewhere in the rafters. You consider composing a haiku about that cricket. Something deep and vaguely melancholic. But your poetic brain left hours ago, back when your stomach was louder than your thoughts. Your focus drifts not entirely on purpose. You remember earlier today, brief flashes of chaos, the dust kicked up during a charge, the hissing sound of a near-miss arrow, the startled look on the other guy's face right before he realized you were slightly faster. You don't dwell on the faces. You never do. That's a different room in your brain, one with a heavy sliding door that you don't open at night. Your thoughts shift again. What would it be like to never fight again? To take this robe and these mats and just walk away one day, head into the mountains, grow tea leaves, write poems that don't rhyme, and complain about rain to anyone who will listen. You know at least 2 retired samurai who did that. One of them came back 6 weeks later because he missed arguing over battle formations. The other? Still up there. Probably arguing with squirrels now. Eventually, someone across the room coughs. a subtle social cue that the meditation session is wrapping up. One by one, the men begin to shift out of sisa, groaning under their breath, flexing knees, rubbing calves like they've just climbed Mount Fuji. You follow suit, thankful your legs still work, mostly. You ease down onto the tatami again, arms behind you, body stretched, eyes half lidded. This is the afterglow of stillness, the part where your limbs feel warm, your thoughts soft, your face slowly surrendering to gravity. Someone starts burning incense again, this time a sweeter kind like cinnamon mixed with moss. It's unnecessary, and yet suddenly you cannot imagine going without it. Across the room, someone begins setting up a small lacquer table. It's not for eating, it's for writing. Letters, poetry, records, whatever excuse they have to push a brush around and pretend they're scholars. You rise to join, not because you have anything wise to say, but because the act of writing calms your thoughts the way swinging a sword never can. You sit again, yes, cross-legged because Siza betrayed you, and take a thin rice paper scroll, a brush, and a block of ink. There's already a small dish of water. You grind the ink slowly, rhythmically, until it turns into a dark, shiny pool. And then you write. Not a battle report. Not a list of items destroyed or acquired or mourned. Just a few words. A wandering thought. Maybe something about the cricket. Or the way the moonlight broke across your blade this afternoon. Or maybe you just draw a very detailed stick figure of your commander with a questionable haircut. Quirky samurai fact for the night. Some warriors practiced calligraphy obsessively, believing it could reveal the soul. Bold strokes for courage, clean lines for clarity, wild swirls for, well, guys who drank too much sake. There's a story, probably exaggerated, of one general whose dying wish was to write a final haiku with his own blood. That's either dedication or very specific trauma. Your brush dances across the paper, and the world narrows to the sound of bristles and breath. It's not about perfection, it's about being present, which frankly is harder than it sounds. After a while, your scroll dries. You lay it aside, you stretch again. Every stretch now feels like a small victory. And roll your shoulders. Someone across the room sneezes. A second later, he sneezes again. You and the others exchange a glance. Clearly haunted, definitely cursed. Probably not dangerous. The candle burns lower, the incense thins. You are now a robe-wrapped silhouette with ink on your fingers and the pleasant ache of too much posture practice. You've meditated, you've written, you've remembered how human you are, and now it's time for a little distraction. Because as calming as all this is, you're still a samurai with a head full of noise. And nothing drowns out the noise better than tea that tastes like wet leaves. But we'll get there. You sit back from your scroll, admiring your work, or at least not actively cringing at it. The ink has bled slightly into the rice paper, blurring one character so it looks like either peace or pickle, depending on how hard you squint. You decide not to correct it. The world has enough critics, and besides, you're not submitting this to the emperor. The candle flickers lower. That's shamisen from earlier? Still going, now joined by a soft whistle that could either be a flute or someone's nose doing its best impression. You glance toward the hallway where the next phase of the evening waits. Your stomach is calm, your limbs loose, and your mind, well, your mind is always a little restless. But you know what helps? Tea. The kind that tastes like crushed lawn clippings. You pad down the corridor toward the tea room. This one's tucked into a side building, intentionally small and simple, almost absurdly so. You duck slightly to enter. That's by design. Humility begins at the doorway. Everyone bows to get in, even the egotistical types who think humility is a blade, sharp enough to loan but never own. Inside, it's quiet. Not silent, but delicately hushed. The kind of atmosphere that feels like a held breath. Like a secret not worth keeping unless it's told through steam and porcelain. You kneel again. Your knees are keeping a tally. Before you sits a low table. On it, a small iron kettle over a glowing charcoal bed, a bamboo ladle, and a collection of tea bowls that somehow look older than time. The host is another retainer, lower ranked, soft spoken, and very serious about tea. He bows. You bow, everyone bows. A lot of bowing tonight. He begins preparing the tea with movements so precise they might as well be choreography. Every scoop, pour, and whisk is deliberate, slow, almost reverent. You watch steam rise from the bowl in thin wisps, curling like incense, vanishing before your thoughts can catch up. It's matcha tonight. Bright green powder whisked into a frothy, slightly foamy drink that tastes like something a forest elf might serve you as a dare. It's not bad per se, it's just an acquired taste, like dried seaweed or political stability. The bowl is passed to you with two hands. You accept with two hands. That's the way. One hand for honor, one hand for not dropping scalding liquid on your robe. You turn the bowl, another ritual, admiring its imperfections. That crack in the glaze? Intentional. The rough edge? A design choice. The chipped foot? Probably not on purpose, but now symbolic. Everything is a metaphor, even your posture. You sip. The tea is warm, vegetal, slightly bitter. Not sweet, not comforting in the usual sense. But there's something grounding about it, like your mouth just got slapped back into the present moment. It's the kind of drink that forces your attention and dares you to say something profound. You don't. You just sip again. Someone to your left is quietly reciting a poem. It's about fog, or loneliness, or foggy loneliness. It's hard to tell. His voice is low and melodic, more background noise than performance. You've heard him do this before. He likes metaphors involving rivers and ghosts. Occasionally, he throws in something about socks. No one knows why. Quirky fact time. Some samurai actually hosted tea ceremonies as displays of elegance and restraint. Warlords would meet not in armor, but in these hushed rooms, sipping bitter tea and exchanging glances that said, "Yes, I could have your head cut off, but for now, let's contemplate moss." Historians still argue whether these tea ceremonies were genuine spiritual exercises or just incredibly passive-aggressive meetings. After all, it's hard to argue with someone who just offered you a handmade rice cake and then said nothing for 20 minutes. Back to the tea. You finish your bowl. There's a faint powdery aftertaste on your tongue. It lingers, not unpleasantly. The host bows again. You bow. Everyone bows once more in a slow-motion group, nod of mutual survival. The kettle hisses gently as more water is poured. Someone jokes, very softly, about how this tea might be stronger than their sword arm. A rare laugh bubbles up. Not loud, just a shared exhale. Then someone asks, "Remember the scroll duel?" A collective groan. You remember. How could you forget? It was months ago. Two samurai arguing over whether a specific poem was meant to express longing or indigestion. The argument escalated. Swords were drawn. Not swung, just drawn. They ended up resolving it by writing competitive haiku. 3 rounds. 1 broken inkstone. 1 very confused scribe. The winner got bragging rights and a rice dumpling. The loser got a second rice dumpling. Everyone lost, really. You smile, just a little. Your hands wrap around the empty tea bowl, still warm. You hold it for a moment longer than necessary. Not because you're cold, but because warmth is rare. Not just physical warmth, but the kind that comes from stillness, from slowness, from bitter drinks that taste like patience. Another round of tea begins. You pass this time, bowing softly to excuse yourself. Your bladder has other priorities. You stand, your knees complaining with the same frequency as an old horse in rain. Outside the tea room, the night has deepened. The moon hangs higher, shadows longer now, stretching across the courtyard like sleepy cats. You walk slowly, your robe catching a breeze that rustles the bamboo lining the garden path. Somewhere, a wind chime rattles lazily, offbeat, almost sulky. You pause near a koi pond. The water glints in the moonlight, dark and smooth with the occasional ripple from a fish who probably doesn't understand war or poetry or the strange bitterness of green tea. Lucky fish. You kneel again. Yes, again. And just watch. No thoughts, no sword, no responsibilities. Just koi. Water. Moon. You exhale. You feel your own heartbeat slow like a drum fading at the end of song. You're not asleep yet, but your mind is closer now. The edges are softening. You're just a man in a robe who survived the day and made it to the part where the tea tastes like leaves. And somehow, that feels like triumph. You stay by the koi pond longer than you probably should, watching the fat, lazy fish swirl beneath the water like mottled spirits that don't care about honor or taxes or whether you washed behind your ears. A ripple disturbs their path, and for a moment you pretend it's a metaphor for something profound. Change, maybe. Or maybe the fish are just confused by their own reflection. Eventually, the night calls you back indoors, not with words, of course, but with a shift in air, a flicker in the lantern light, the gentle sense that the next rhythm of this slow evening is about to begin. You return to a quieter room now, tucked off the main corridor. It's furnished with nothing more than a low table, an inkstone, and several brushes of varying thickness. Scrolls are stacked in the corner, some written, some waiting. This is the calligraphy room, or, depending on who you ask, the ego wrestling dojo of handwriting. You take your seat, slowly, respectfully, because your legs have filed at least 2 complaints this evening. The mat beneath you is cool, the brush between your fingers, oddly comforting. There's something about holding a writing tool after holding a weapon all day. It makes your hands feel like they're allowed to make things instead of ending them. You grind the ink stick in the water dish, swirling it against the stone like a chef preparing sauce. Except the only thing you're serving tonight is existential expression and occasional misspellings. You dip the brush and press it to the paper. A single stroke. Bold, a little crooked, possibly symbolic. You keep going. Tonight you're not composing reports or transcribing orders. Tonight is about what you want to write. And that's dangerous, because what you want to write might be too honest, too ridiculous, or somehow both. You go for a haiku first. It's safe. 3 lines, 17 syllables, no risk of metaphorical nosebleeds. Something about moonlight, or sandals, or moonlit sandals. You scribble and pause, realizing halfway through your 3rd attempt that you're not even sure if you're writing about a tree or a deep-rooted resentment of archery drills. Either way, it flows better in brush than in thought. Quirky fact: samurai didn't just dabble in calligraphy, they were expected to be good at it. Swordsmanship and penmanship went hand in ink-stained hand. There was even a phrase, "the brush and the sword are one." Which is lovely until you realize your brush keeps skipping and your ink just blobbed like a startled octopus. You grab a fresh sheet. This one's for art. You try a large kanji. Something dramatic. Stillness. Or is it duck? Honestly, your strokes aren't helping. You lean back and sigh. Someone next to you mutters a quiet curse. You glance over and see that he's accidentally written an entire character backward. He sighs too, then flips the paper over and starts again like it didn't happen. You do the same. There's an unspoken agreement here. Calligraphy rooms are where mistakes go to get brushed over, not punished. Historians still argue whether samurai poetry and brushwork were genuine outlets of emotion or just another form of status display. Was the guy crying over his poem, or was he just hoping it would get published in some local anthology so he could impress a tea maiden? We'll never know. You try one more. Not a poem this time. Just a letter. It starts, "If I don't return by the first snowfall," and you stop there. Not because you don't know how it ends, but because you do know. You fold the page and set it aside, a face down. Not for sending, just for letting it exist. You watch as another samurai across the room carefully signs his name with a flourish so unnecessarily fancy it might cause a duel. He admires it, bows slightly to his own handwriting, then begins writing the same line again, Perfection is addictive, even when it's elusive. You glance at the wall scroll. It's old, faded, and says something about balance in chaos. You're fairly certain that's not true. Balance doesn't exist in chaos. You just get used to wobbling. Outside the paper screens, the night grows thicker. The garden is quieter now. Even the frogs are taking breaks between croaks. There's a soft gust of wind, and the scroll in the alcove rustles faintly as if sighing at your brush technique. You rise, stretch your back, and flex your fingers. There's ink on your sleeve. Somehow there's ink on your forehead. No one says anything. That's another unspoken agreement. After the fifth hour of calligraphy, we pretend we are all clean and dignified. You clean your brush, not quickly. You take your time because rituals matter more when they're small. You rinse it in the little water basin, watching the ink bleed like a cloud unraveling in slow motion. You wipe the bristles with a cloth so soft it feels like secret. Then you bow to the brush because, yes, that's a thing, and you place it back in its bamboo holder. You leave the room without a scroll in hand, not because you failed to make anything, but because tonight, the making was enough. The hallway outside is empty. Just you and the low light of an oil lantern flickering like a tired eye. You move slowly now, not out of caution, but out of deliberate softness. You are shedding the last of the day's sharpness. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the lacquer of a closed door. Just a shadow, a silhouette. Not a warrior, not a poet. Just someone in between. And somehow, that's the most peaceful version of you. The calligraphy ink still faintly stains your fingers. You don't mind. It means you were here. It means today wasn't just blood and noise. It means something passed through your hands that wasn't a blade, and that is worth remembering. You're not even sure how long you've been sitting in the quiet now, but your spine is starting to hum with that familiar ache. The one that means, time to stop pretending you're still 20. You push yourself up, joints clicking like someone dropped a basket of bamboo chopsticks, and follow the faint scent of grilling fish and burnt rice husks down the corridor. It's time for the actual dinner. The meal that's served to the house's inner circle, the loyal retainers and the odd guest who somehow wandered into the estate and convinced someone they mattered. You're not technically important, but you've bled enough in service to your lord that you've earned a cushion at the table. The dining hall tonight is dimmer, quieter. This isn't the bustling post-bathroom visit mess hall from earlier. No, this is dinner version 2.0. An intimate setting where the food is served slowly, the lighting flatters everyone, and the goal is less fuel for muscles and more gentle sensory ritual. You kneel again. Your knees sigh like overworked bureaucrats. You nod to the samurai already seated. Some you know well, some you know only as shapes on the battlefield. Everyone here has that same lean, sleep-deprived look that says, yes, I too have fought bandits in the rain while hungover. The first course arrives. A shallow bowl of miso soup with barely their tofu cubes and slivers of green onion that look like they were sliced by someone with surgical vendettas. It's delicate, nearly see-through. You sip it slowly. It tastes like something your grandmother would serve you if your grandmother was also trained in battlefield triage and emotional repression. Then comes the grilled fish, salted ayu, the kind with skin so crisp it crackles when your chopsticks land. You work around the bones carefully. You've seen a man lose a fight because a fishbone lodged in his throat and threw off his focus. Not tonight. The rice is perfectly shaped. Glossy, hot, just enough chew to remind you you're alive. You mix it with a dab of pickled plum, and it punches you right in the taste buds. You don't complain. Someone to your left mumbles, "This is better than the rations from yesterday." You glance over and recognize him, a spear-wielding lunatic from your squad. He's shirtless beneath his robe, hair tied in a loose topknot, and already on his second helping. You nod in agreement. Yesterday's rations tasted like disappointment stuffed into a barley sack. There's not much talking, just the soft sounds of eating, the occasional grunt of approval, and the quiet scrape of bowls sliding across lacquered trays. Someone pours a little sake, not a lot, just enough to ease the day off your shoulders like a warm towel. You're halfway through your meal when the conversation starts. Naturally, slowly, ghost stories. Again. They're a favorite, and tonight the room is just tired enough to welcome them. The bridge near Kawago, someone says, still echoes footsteps at night, but no one's seen who walks it. Someone across the room chuckles. That's just old wood swelling in the rain. No, says the first man, voice lower now. I heard the steps. I felt them. Another samurai leans forward. You were drunk. This earns a nod from most of the room. No one argues about the ghost, just about how much sake was involved. Ghosts are the unofficial fourth dish of every samurai dinner, alongside fish, rice, and unspoken trauma. Quirky fact: samurai genuinely feared spirits, not always the dramatic, glowing-eyed ones. Often it was subtler things: a sudden chill, a shadow that moved wrong, a face that seemed too familiar. Some carried talismans, others scribbled protection spells inside their armor. One warrior you knew used to sleep with a fox mask beside him because someone told him fox spirits warded off nightmares. He still screamed in his sleep. As the meal continues, the mood relaxes further. Someone tells a story about a merchant who tried to haggle with a swordsmith and ended up selling his own sandals to pay for the deposit. Another mentions a duel where both fighters missed 3 times before one just gave up and moved to a fishing village. You laugh, not loudly, but genuinely. It feels good. Not the forced camaraderie of battlefields, but the loose, slouching ease of men who survived a day and decided they liked their companions enough to chew rice nearby. The last course arrives, a small piece of simmered pumpkin and soy and mirin. It melts in your mouth like autumn, deciding to forgive you. You finish it slowly, savoring the last flavors, not because you're fancy, but because your belly finally feels content. Then comes a moment of collective silence. Not awkward, just mutual digestion. Outside, wind rustles the trees again. You hear distant laughter, probably the kitchen boys now off duty and sharing their own makeshift feast of pickles and stolen rice crackers. You hope they saved some plum wine. You're not above bribery. One of the older samurai stands to speak. He's weathered, with hands like gnarled roots and a voice like split timber. He talks about a friend he lost during a patrol, his tone soft but unsentimental. There's no grand speech, no poetic send-off. Just a name, a nod, and a pause that says everything. You sip the last of your sake. It tastes stronger now, sharper, like the day's stories have steeped in it. The plates are cleared. You bow, rise, and stretch again. One of your knees gives out slightly, and you pretend it didn't. Everyone's pretending something. That's half of adulthood. You shuffle out into the corridor once more, robe slightly askew, belly full, spirit somehow calmer. You are officially done with food tonight. If another rice bowl appears, you will adopt it, give it a name, and set it free. But now the music begins, and not the elegant court kind. No, what comes next is the sound of strings and stories, the creaking of old instruments and older voices, echoing into a night that's nowhere near finished. You hear the first notes before you even reach the room. A single pluck, hesitant and deliberate, like someone testing if the shamisen remembered how to be an instrument. It's followed by another, smoother this time, then a string of rising tones that twang softly into the corridor. The sound slips beneath the paper doors like a whisper on old floorboards. You follow it. Inside the common room, a circle of samurai has formed. Not strict, not ceremonial, just the organic clustering of people too full to move and too restless to sleep. Someone's lit a few extra lanterns, their glow casting lazy shadows across the tatami mats. The shamisen player sits in the center, cross-legged, Posture stiff with dignity, eyes half lidded like he's trying to convince himself he didn't agree to this just 15 minutes ago. He plucks another phrase. The notes wobble slightly like they're walking home tipsy. Then they even out, settle into something smoother. A folk song you recognize, one about plum blossoms and waiting lovers. Or maybe just the weather. Half of these old songs sound the same, and that's kind of the point. You ease into the circle, finding a cushion and folding your legs beneath you. Around you, others do the same. One man is already nodding off, head bobbing with the rhythm like a quiet drumbeat of exhaustion. The song continues, not loud, not proud. Just there, like a soft string being pulled through the room. It vibrates in your chest, tickling old memories you didn't know still had dust on them. Somewhere near the back, someone starts humming. It's off key. Beautifully so. No one stops him. A woman's voice joins in. Older, raspy, probably one of the kitchen staff sneaking in from the back hall. Her verse is short, just 4 lines, sung like she's telling a secret to her knees. The room listens. There's no clapping. Just silence afterward and a slow exhale from someone you can't see. Then another tune, brighter, sillier, something about a fox stealing sandals. It's fast, borderline ridiculous, and you don't realize you're smiling until your face starts to ache. Historians still argue whether samurai gatherings like this were common or exaggerated by romanticized storytelling. Were warriors really this folksy when not killing each other, or is this just the bedtime version of their lives, smoothed out and stripped of tension? But the record does show. Music happened. Lutes were plucked, drums tapped, and sometimes someone with questionable pitch sang boldly about dumplings and heartbreak. You've seen lords host full musical evenings with koto players and flutists. You've also seen rank-and-file warriors make a 3-string shamisen sing like it's got feelings. Tonight leans toward the latter. The man beside you suddenly begins tapping the floor with his knuckle in time with the music. Not loudly, just enough to add a beat. Someone else follows with a soft slap of their palm against their thigh. And somehow, the room becomes a makeshift orchestra of the mildly sleep-deprived. The player, emboldened, leans into the rhythm now. His fingers dance across the strings, calluses making every note ring true. He closes his eyes and tilts his head back like a man possessed, or at least thoroughly enjoying the moment. You wonder briefly if he's ever done this sober before. Then, a pause. The music halts. A silence opens up. The kind of silence that dares someone to fill it. And someone does. A story. Told slowly, almost reluctantly, as if he just remembered it right then. It starts with a fox disguised as a woman, of course, and a traveler who accepts a bowl of rice from her without realizing it's been enchanted to taste like his mother's cooking. He eats it, falls in love, and only realizes she's a fox when he sees her tail sticking out of her kimono while she's chasing a butterfly. Laughter erupts, not loud but rich, layered with sleep and sake and that weird kind of joy that only comes from stories that have absolutely no reason to exist. You chime in with your own tale. Something about a haunted well, a samurai who tried to flirt with a ghost, and a monk who resolved the whole thing by offering the ghost a cup of tea and yelling at it. It's a dumb story. You embellish freely. No one cares. They laugh anyway. A younger samurai tries to tell a joke but forgets the ending. He just shrugs. That earns the biggest laugh of the night. And then someone lets it happen. The fart. Loud, undeniable, proud. The room goes still. Then the guilty party raises one hand and says solemnly, "Victory." The room collapses. Laughter like falling rain. One guy's laughing so hard he rolls over sideways and hits his head on a wall. He doesn't stop. Neither do the rest. There's something healing in this. The absurdity. The shared ridiculousness. The way the day, full of mud and weapons and rules, dissolves into music, stories, and the occasional body sound no one is willing to claim the second time. You lean back on your hands, head tipped toward the ceiling. You trace the rafters with your eyes, then close them briefly, letting the sounds swirl around you. The music resumes, softer now. A final tune, barely plucked as if the instrument itself is getting sleepy. No one speaks. No one needs to. It's the lull between day and dream. Quirky detail, there was once a samurai bard known for composing lullabies that could calm children, horses, and even drunken warriors in a rage. Some say his shamaden was made from the ribs of a whale, though more likely it was just particularly well-lacquered pine. Either way, his songs were said to leave even the most hardened fighters blinking back tears. Or possibly yawns. You're not crying, but you are definitely blinking. The player finishes. He doesn't bow. He just lowers the shamisen, rests it beside him, and yawns into his sleeve like a man who's done more than enough for one evening. No applause. Just gratitude in the stillness. You stand again. Barely. Your legs are more suggestions than limbs now. You bow slightly to the player, then shuffle away, footsteps soft on the tatami. The night is deep. Not dark, just deep. Like warm water. Like something you could fall into and not need to surface from for a while. As you pass the koi pond again, the water is still. Even the fish have settled into their strange, sleepy drift. And you? You're drifting too. Not into sleep. Not quite yet, but into that space just before it, where the body softens and the mind begins to untie its knots. You leave the music behind like a scent trail fading in the air, a few last notes clinging to your robe as if unwilling to let go. The hallway is nearly empty now. One lantern still burns, flickering softly with a draft that seems too tired to finish its journey. You step around a stray cushion in the corridor. Someone clearly gave up halfway to their room and decided, this'll do. It's the perfect time for nonsense. Not battle drills or blade cleaning or political strategy, but the kind of talk that floats best in the dark. Silly debates, half-true stories, wildly inaccurate rumors. You know the room where this happens. Tucked behind the inner veranda, past the rack where straw sandals dry like sunburnt pastries. You follow the faint hum of low voices. You enter without knocking. This isn't a formal meeting. It's more like a tavern without the tavern. Just men stretched out on floor cushions, some reclined, one lying flat with a damp cloth over his face like he's auditioning for a tragic play. A tiny brazier glows in the center, casting gentle shadows on the rice paper walls. The air smells like old wood, foot wraps, and roasted barley, a nostalgic kind of ugly. Someone's halfway through telling a story. You catch it mid-sentence. And that's when the monkey bit him, right on the cheek. Laughter explodes around the room. One man wheezes so hard he tips over and knocks over a tray of plum pits. No one helps. That's the rule in here. If you tip, you live with it. You settle in near the edge, stealing a pillow and a piece of dried persimmon that was probably communal, probably not. It tastes like sugar and bark. Delicious. The next tale involves a local shrine, a bucket of sake, and a statue that allegedly bowed. Someone adds that they once heard the statue burp. Someone else swears the shrine maiden saw it tap its foot. The stories spiral. You throw in your own memory. A village woman who sold charms she claimed were infused with samurai courage. You bought one once. Got food poisoning 3 hours later. Coincidence? Sure, but also probably definitely cursed. Historians still argue whether these kinds of stories, ghosts, curses, mystical monkeys, were believed or just passed around as cultural bonding. Some scrolls suggest samurai were deeply superstitious. Others insist they laughed off such tales. You suspect both are true. A man can laugh at a demon and still sleep with a salt pouch under his pillow. The brazier crackles. Someone pours sake from a squat ceramic bottle into thimble-sized cups, one by one, like a reluctant barista. You accept yours with a quiet thanks. It's warm, sharp, and tastes like toasted worry. You sip slowly. The room softens further. And then someone, dead serious, asks, "What's the best way to defeat a tengu?" Here we go. For the record, a tengu is a mythical creature with the face of a bird, the attitude of an angry librarian, and the fighting skill of 5 drunk swordsmen fused into one. No one has ever proven their existence, which means everyone here has a plan for how to beat one. "A fan," one says. "They hate wind." "Fire," says another. "Obviously." "You can't beat one," mutters the guy lying flat. "You have to seduce it. You nearly choke on your sake." "That's not a tengu," someone replies. "That's your wife." More laughter. The sleepy, wheezy kind that has no sharp corners. You lean back, belly warm, face aching from smiling. No one's performing. No one's trying to be the loudest. Everyone's just tossing stories into the air like leaves in the wind, watching them fall wherever they may. You glance around the room. These men you fought beside them, sweated beside them, watched one of them chase a raccoon out of the storeroom with a bakken while shouting tactical advice. And now here you all are, wrapped in night robes and ridiculous opinions. One man starts snoring mid-sentence. Another gently takes the cup from his hand and places it down like a ceremonial relic. This is the level of care here, not heroic, not poetic, just enough to keep things from spilling. You're reminded of a minor tradition, not widely known, a bit fringe. Some samurai would carry tiny notebooks to record interesting dreams. Not visions, not prophecies. Just strange, sleepy logic worth remembering. One such warrior wrote an entire scroll about a duel he fought underwater against a shrimp. He claimed the shrimp won. You believe him. You consider recording tonight. Evening conversation. Subjects included ghost bridges, talking statues, and whether or not birds make good sparring partners. You watch the brazier flicker lower. The sake bottle's nearly empty. One man begins quietly singing, not a full song, just a line or two. Something about pine needles and old love. He doesn't finish. No one asks him to. Someone near the window coughs. The kind of cough that says, "I have thoughts about government rice policy, but now is not the time." You stretch, your back cracking like a rolled scroll. No one notices. Or they pretend not to. That's the quiet dignity of this hour. Whatever happens in this room doesn't need to be retold. It's for now, not for legend. A faint breeze curls in under the door, stirring a paper scrap near the brazier. It flutters once and settles. You stare at it, mesmerized, your thoughts lighter than your limbs. The story's slow. Words become fewer, pauses longer. Someone hums again, softer now. Like a lullaby with no tune, just the echo of contentment. You close your eyes for a second. Just a second. And in that blink, you see the night stretch before you like a calm field. Still, waiting, not empty, just full of nothing urgent. And that's the most restful kind of full there is. The sake room slowly empties, like a tide retreating. One by one, samurai stretch, groan, and drift off into the corridors, moving like elderly ghosts wrapped in cotton robes. The brazier's glow dims to embers, and the air feels heavier now, not with tension, but with that velvety weight that only arrives when laughter's been spent, and silence has earned its place. You're among the last to leave, rising with a soft grunt and brushing crumbs of dried persimmon from your robe. The room behind you exhales as the screen door slides closed. Ahead lies your futon, finally, but not just yet. There's one last stop in the nightly rhythm, and unfortunately, it involves more work. Sword maintenance. Because even in a house full of warriors pretending to be poets, no one gets to skip the ritual of taking care of their katana. It's not about shine or bragging rights. It's about respect, discipline, and also not wanting your blade to chip the next time someone tries to slice your spleen. You step into the armory annex, a small, quiet room near the rear veranda. It smells like oil, wood, and long-forgotten effort. Sword racks line the walls, some full, some empty. There's a small table in the center, already laid with cloths, rice paper, a bottle of clove oil, and a few tools worn smooth by time and fingers. You kneel in front of the rack where your sword waits. You left it here after the bath, respectfully stored, blade edge facing upward, hilt angled just so. You reach out, lifting it with both hands, the weight instantly familiar. It's not just a weapon, it's an extension of every tense moment you've lived, every threat you've measured, every promise you've kept. You unsheath it slowly. Shk. The sound is sharp, but not harsh, like a breath inhaled through teeth. You lay the blade gently on the cloth. The steel catches the lamplight in a thin line, a quiet shimmer that says, "Still here. Still deadly. Still yours." You inspect the edge. There's a faint nick near the base, not from today's fight, but one you've left too long. Probably the result of parrying a halberd swung with more muscle than skill. You remember the guy. Terrible footwork. Great aim. You start cleaning. First, the uchiko, a silk-wrapped ball filled with powdered stone. You tap it lightly along the blade, dusting the metal with a soft, cloudy film. It smells faintly of chalk and rice. Then, using fresh rice paper, you wipe the blade from base to tip. Careful, smooth, deliberate. Always base to tip. Always toward the future, not the past. You repeat the process. Oil next. A few drops on a clean cloth, smoothed lovingly over the blade's surface. The steel darkens slightly, gleaming with renewed purpose. The oil seeps into the memory of the metal, protecting, preserving, reminding you that even rest has responsibilities. Quirky tidbit. Samurai used to give their swords names, not always out loud, but in private, as if speaking to them. Some were poetic. Moonlight Whisper, Wind's Mercy. Others were less elegant. Pig Sticker or That Damn Thing. You haven't named yours? But sometimes when you're tired, you talk to it anyway. Still sharp? You murmur. Me neither. You let it dry. The room is quiet except for the soft drag of cloth and your own slow breathing. Somewhere outside, a night bird calls once, a single note slicing through the dark like your freshly oiled blade. A younger samurai enters, nods at you, and kneels with his own sword. You recognize him from today's skirmish. Still has that slightly shell-shocked look. He unsheathes too quickly, blade nearly clattering to the table. You wince on his behalf. He glances over, sheepish. "I'm still learning," he says. You nod. "So is your sword." He chuckles, unsure if you're joking. You're not. Not really. Historians still debate whether sword maintenance was truly a nightly ritual, or more of a weekly obligation stretched into myth. Some argue it depended on rank. Higher samurai had attendants do the cleaning. Others claim even the lords wiped their own blades when the mood was right. Either way, the act became a symbol of discipline, whether done every night or only on the full moon with a dramatic flair. You prefer nightly, not because it's required, but because you remember what happens when it's skipped. A dull blade, a sticky scabbard, a moment of hesitation that costs too much. You finish your task, lay the sword across your lap for a moment, and breathe. It's just a tool, but it's your tool. The quiet one that speaks in arcs and edges, in light that flickers off its curve like it's telling a story without words. You sheath it. The sound this time is different, deeper, final. You place the katana back in its spot, handle outward, resting it for the night like a soldier who deserves a break. You wipe your hands, the oil leaving a faint sheen on your fingertips. It will fade by morning, but it's a mark you like, proof that you ended the day correctly. The younger samurai beside you fumbles a bit, but he's learning. He nods again as you rise. You don't say anything. He's got the look of someone who wants to do well, but also wants someone else to tell him he's already doing fine. You don't give him that gift. Not tonight. He'll earn it. You step back out into the night air, It's cooler now, the humidity finally surrendering. The moon's higher, thinner, more silver than white. You feel its glow brushing your face like a quiet benediction. Your feet move more slowly now, not from exhaustion, from satisfaction. The blade is clean, the day is ending, and ahead lies the final pleasure of the evening, lying down, not dying, just lying down. But before your head meets the pillow, the thoughts will come. The dreaming, the remembering, the random memories and the ghost of that one tax collector who looked like a boiled yam. You're almost there, but not quite. You head toward the sleeping quarters, feet brushing along the polished floor in a slow, steady shuffle. Not because you're trying to be quiet, but because honestly it's all you've got left in you. Your robe sways gently with each step, loose and soft, finally dry from earlier, carrying the faintest trace of cedar smoke and worn cotton. A breeze from an open window follows you down the corridor, cool against your face, carrying the earthy scent of wet wood and distant rain. It's the hour where the estate quiets into whispers. Even the insects outside seem to have lowered their volume in respect. But before rest, there's one last ceremony. Mundane, repetitive, weirdly comforting. Blade talk? Yes, again. Because somehow after you've cleaned the sword, you have to talk about it. You step into another shared chamber, this one lined with sword racks and small stools. Half armory, half clubhouse for the sleep-resistant and mildly obsessive. A few other samurai are already there, leaning over blades, comparing Suba designs, or arguing quietly over the merits of certain polishing techniques like they're discussing ancient philosophy. You lower yourself onto a cushion, barely containing the groan as your knees file another official protest. Across from you, a veteran with a chin like a cracked riverstone is wrapping his blade handle with new silk cord, tongue poking out slightly in concentration. To your left, a younger samurai is oiling the same katana he's already cleaned twice tonight. You all nod at each other. It's a weird kind of community. Not based on warmth, but mutual aches and shared respect for the one object that's never lied to you. Someone holds up a blade. This, he says, was folded 600 times. Another scoffs. And now it's dull enough to slice tofu without leaving a mark. Laughter? The kind that rumbles from the chest, not the belly. You lean in. The debate begins. Steel composition, handle wrapping, sheath craftsmanship. One man insists that wiping your blade with oiled paper made from mulberry bark gives it better balance. Another swears the only true way to test a sword's quality is by cutting bundles of straw while reciting poetry. I tried that, someone says. The sword bent, and I forgot the second verse. Even now, even half asleep, you find yourself slipping into the rhythm. You describe a blade you once held that sang as it swung. No, not metaphorically, it actually whistled. Was it the shape? The speed? You're not sure, but the memory sticks. The sound of it cutting through the air is clean as a hawk's cry. Quirky samurai note. There was once a class of swordsmiths who believed every blade had a soul and that improper use could anger it. One legend tells of a katana that would refuse to cut if disrespected. A man tried to use it on a tree out of boredom, and the sword simply turned in his hand. He lived, but he couldn't hold chopsticks for a month. You mention the story, and someone in the room nods slowly. Some swords just don't like trees, he murmurs. Historians still argue whether this kind of sword-person bond was widespread truth or poetic superstition. Did warriors really feel when their blade was off? Or was that just how they explained a bad swing? The answer probably depends on how many drinks they'd had and whether anyone else saw them miss. You listen more than you speak now. The conversations aren't going anywhere new. They're spiraling gently like smoke or the tide. Someone always brings up the legendary sword that could cut a silk scarf midair. Someone else counters with a tale of a blade so sharp it cut a shadow. Then comes the mockery, the laughter. The quiet agreement that everyone's exaggerating, but not enough to ruin the fun. A man begins describing a duel he witnessed. Two samurai circling, blades drawn, neither moving for what felt like hours. Not a sound, not a twitch. Finally, one leaned forward slightly and the other collapsed. Not from the blade, from sheer tension. You sure he wasn't just tired? Someone asks. Pretty sure he was both, the storyteller replies. The blade chat slowly decays into comfortable silence. One by one, swords are sheathed again, cloths folded, oil bottles recapped. The veteran sighs, flexing his hand like it's a rusty hinge. The younger samurai traces the edge of his blade, not dangerously, just reverently. You rest your hand on your own hilt, not for drawing, just for grounding. Like a dog checking its leash is still there. You rise. Not all at once, of course. First the knees creak, then the spine makes its objections known. Then finally the body agrees to stand. One by one, the others follow suit, the unofficial dismissal sounding more like old floorboards and exhaled breath than any command. You leave the room last because someone has to close the sliding screen gently, and because standing still for a moment gives your hips time to stop threatening open rebellion. You walk back toward the sleeping quarters again. Your fingers smell faintly of oil and rice paper. Your mind smells faintly of stories, old steel, and the echo of one bad joke about tofu. The corridor is cooler now. You spot a spider climbing slowly up a paper screen. It's tiny, diligent, and clearly unaware that your foot was nearly there a moment ago. You don't crush it. Tonight, everything gets to survive. You arrive at your sleeping mat. Finally. No sword talk, no ghost jokes, no poetry duels. Just a folded futon and a pillow that's slightly flatter than you remember, but still shaped like forgiveness. You drop to your knees beside it. Breathe. Lay your sword nearby. Not too close, but close enough. And as you sink onto the mat, limbs aching, thoughts starting to fray, you hear someone nearby murmur in their sleep, "I still think the sword was cursed." You smile into the darkness. Let the debates continue without you. Tonight, your blade is clean, your belly is full, your ghost story quota has been met. Sleep is coming, but before it does, dreams. And those have their own rules. You lie on your futon now, finally horizontal after what feels like 3 lifetimes of kneeling, crouching, squatting, and pretending Caesar doesn't feel like slow-motion punishment. Your back is grateful. Your legs have officially shut down any future negotiations. You stretch slightly under the blanket, a thin layer of cotton over your knees, just enough to chase off the chill from the floor, and exhale a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The room is dim. A small oil lamp burns nearby, its wick barely taller than a thumb's width, flickering as if trying to stay awake just a few more minutes. The paper walls around you are still. Shadows ripple when the wind nudges the bamboo blinds, but nothing startles. It's as if the entire estate is finally exhaling in unison. You stare up at the beams overhead, tracing the knots in the old wood. One looks like a rabbit, one looks like a foot. One suspiciously looks like your commander's scowl. You blink slowly and then close your eyes. Sleep should come easily. But of course it doesn't. Not right away, because this is when the thoughts sneak in. Not loud, not angry. Just soft, stubborn. Slipping through the cracks in the silence. You think about today's skirmish, the way that archer almost got you from behind, the way your foot slipped on a loose stone and nearly ruined your balance, the way that one enemy looked up at you right before he dropped his weapon. You don't remember his face, but you remember his eyes. You try to push the thought away. You focus instead on something dumber. Taxes. Of all things, this is what your brain decides to serve you. The land levy. The rice quota. The whispers that your lord may raise expectations next season, and everyone in your village is already 2 bowls behind. You're not even the accountant, but you've had enough dinner table gossip to earn an honorary title. Your eyebrows twitch in dismay. Why do you think of this now? Because this is what the night does. It digs into the folds of your brain and tosses out oddities like some cosmic jester. You sigh softly and roll onto your side. Quirky historical note. Some samurai genuinely feared peasants. Not in a battlefield way, in a what if they all got organized kind of way. The peasant class vastly outnumbered the warrior elite, and there were periodic uprisings that proved pitchforks and torches could be surprisingly persuasive. One samurai wrote in his personal diary, "If 10 farmers agree on something, the world should worry. You don't fear the farmers, but you do fear their paperwork." A floorboard creaks faintly in the hallway. Probably a servant, or a fellow warrior making one last trip to the privy, or a ghost, because of course your brain goes there too. You remember the tale someone told earlier, the one about the bridge with the footsteps and no walker. The sound is fresh in your mind now. You half expect to hear a tap. 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 Coming down the corridor. You listen. Nothing. Your muscles ease slightly, but not completely. You tug the blanket tighter over your shoulder and try to think of something safer. Dreams of glory, maybe. You remember a time not long ago when you thought you might be promoted. Your sword hand had been steady. Your decisions sharp. You had impressed someone with a poem during a formal visit. For 3 weeks, you floated through the compound like your armor was made of clouds, and then nothing. No promotion. Just another assignment. Just another line in the sand, another name you didn't want to learn, another victory that felt more like delay than reward. You exhale through your nose. You try not to feel bitter. Honor isn't always about being seen. But sometimes, just sometimes, you want the old men in the big rooms to nod in your direction and say, "That one. Maybe one day, maybe not." Historians still argue whether the internal ambitions of samurai were mostly private or shared among their brothers in arms. Was the glory-seeking truly suppressed, or just hidden under 17 layers of decorum? Writings hint at both. There are letters full of restraint, and others that read like barely contained bragging contests between cousins with too much time and not enough bandits. You close your eyes again. This time, instead of peasants or promotions, your thoughts drift to something stranger. The dream you had a week ago. You were walking through a foggy forest, barefoot, unarmed. A stream blocked your path. You knelt to drink from it and saw your reflection, but it wasn't your face. It was your brother's, or a version of him, mouth full of pine needles and eyes that looked back too knowingly. He said, "It's almost time," and then turned into a fox. You've thought about it every night since. Was it a warning? A joke? Just your brain rearranging memories into chaos? Or maybe you ate too many fermented beans at dinner. You'll never know. You shift again. The blanket rustles quietly. Your sword rests beside your futon, just within reach. You've done this for years. Placed it close, but never under your pillow. Some say sleeping too near your blade invites violent dreams. Others say it's disrespectful not to keep it nearby. You say it depends on the night. Tonight, it's there. Silent, still, not needed. You finally begin to sink into something softer. Not quite sleep, but near it. The mental fog thickens. Thoughts lose their edges. Even the pressure in your chest, caused not by armor but by memory, starts to lift. The wind outside picks up briefly. The paper wall shivers. You hear crickets, then nothing. Then you're still here. But you're not awake. Not exactly. You're floating somewhere in between, and that for now is enough. You don't remember when you finally slipped into sleep. It just happened. One moment you were floating in the shallows of thought, and the next you were somewhere far away, inside a dream that made no promises of logic or mercy. There's a battlefield again, of course. Your dreams always start there, but it's not the same as real battle. The ground is too soft, the sky too low, and everyone's wearing masks made of paper and mist. You raise your blade, but it's made of light. You swing, and the sound it makes is a bell ringing underwater. No one falls, no one wins. The whole world just shifts. And then, as dreams do, it tilts into nonsense. Now you're sitting in a field of turnips, arguing with a talking deer who insists your calligraphy is crooked. You try to defend yourself, but he snorts and gallops off with your inkstone balanced on his antlers. You wake up with a quiet grunt, face half buried in your pillow. It's still night. You blink slowly, adjusting to the grainy blackness of the room. Someone else is snoring nearby, long, slow waves of nasal despair. Another futon creaks. A distant splash of water tells you someone just tripped over a bucket in the courtyard. You smile without opening your eyes. You shift on the mat, letting the coolness of the floor seep back into your spine. Your blanket has slipped halfway off, and you pull it back gently, the motion barely registering in your muscles. Everything aches in a pleasant, honest way, the kind of ache you earn, the kind you carry like a badge and forget about until it hums at the edge of your next dream. Outside, the night deepens further. You hear the tap-tap of bamboo against bamboo, a shishiodoshi in the garden, tipping and clacking rhythmically. Meant to scare off animals, it now only soothes the men too tired to be scared of anything. You lie still. You think about tomorrow. Not for long, just enough to know it's waiting. Another training session, maybe more patrol duty. If you're lucky, a letter from home. If you're really lucky, a whole day without armor. You think of the woman who sells fish at the market. She once called you fancy feet after you dodged a falling cart in Geta sandals. You still don't know if that was a compliment. You think of your father, how he tied his headband before every training session like he was preparing for war, even when he was just chasing chickens off the porch. You think of nothing for a while. Just the soft hum of crickets, the faint breeze through the slats, and the comforting weight of your sword nearby. And then, perhaps predictably, your brain decides it's time for one last question. Did you leave the ink lid open? You resist the urge to get up and check. If it's dry tomorrow, so be it. Let the ink gods deal with it. Historians still debate whether samurai were ever truly at peace or just experts at pretending they were. Letters from the time show both. Stoic declarations of stillness next to scribbled notes complaining about tea temperature and mosquito bites. You'd believe either. Right now, you feel both. Peace is a performance some nights, but sometimes it's also real. You curl deeper into the blanket. Your sword shifts faintly against the mat. Just a whisper of steel. You reach out and adjust it, not to fight, not to stand guard, just to know it's where it should be. And now, again, the tide of sleep rolls in. This time, you let it take you fully. But before you drift off, your brain gives you one last image. A field of turnips. And a deer with impeccable penmanship. You smile. Then you sleep. Morning is still a rumor when your eyes drift open again. Not fully, just enough to register that the paper windows have shifted color. The black of night is fading into something closer to iron gray, and the air has a new texture. Cooler, damp, honest. You pull the blanket tighter under your chin, not out of cold, but out of a quiet rebellion against standing up. But you don't get up. Not yet. Because the best part of being a samurai, one no scroll mentions, no historian debates, is this. The in-between. The moment where you are still horizontal, still undisturbed, and not yet owned by duty. Outside, there's a chirp, a hesitant one. The kind a bird makes when it's not sure if the sun is really committed to the whole rise thing. Another chirp joins in. Soon, it'll be a full choir, and the kitchen boys will begin clanking pots with exaggerated passive aggression. But for now, the estate is holding its breath. You shift onto your back, arms crossed over your chest like a mildly dramatic statue. Your sword is still beside you. You reach for it, touch the hilt softly, as if to check whether the night's peace has changed anything. It hasn't. You stare at the ceiling again, noticing a spider web in the corner that wasn't there yesterday. A tiny white spider rests at its center, unmoving. probably exhausted from spinning all night. You get it. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to savor the slow descent of time. Every second stretches, drapes, softens. You can feel your heartbeat without thinking about it. You can feel your body as it rests between usefulness and stillness. It's like the universe is giving you a moment of gentle applause for surviving another day. You hear someone yawn, someone else coughs, someone farts in their sleep, very heroically. And just like that, the day begins to breathe. But you're not ready to move. Not yet. Your mind slips sideways back into half dreams. Not of war, not of rice taxes or curiously judgmental deer. This time you dream of the rain, not the cold kind, not the storm kind, the slow kind, the gentle patter on a tiled roof, the way it pools in the garden and draws out the scent of the soil. You're standing there, dream you, under a wide paper umbrella that never gets wet. The rain hits everything but you. You feel safe. Still. Dry somehow, in a world that drips with memory. And maybe, just maybe, that's the goal of the samurai after all. Not glory, not fearlessness, not even honor, but that quiet sense of safety. That soft moment between alertness and sleep, where you are no one's weapon, where you just are. Wind rustles the bamboo again. A screen clicks softly in another room. You hear sandals on the walkway. Someone's already up, already preparing tea or tying on greaves or adjusting their daily scowl in the mirror. You breathe in, then out. You sit up slowly, carefully, like a tree testing its roots. No sudden movements. You fold your blanket. You rise. You slide open the screen just a bit to let in the early light. It pours through like a whispered promise. And the room, now quiet and empty, but for your breath and the dust in the air, holds the shape of the night before. The ink stains on your fingers are nearly gone. The stories are still in the floorboards. The laughter echoes in the walls. The blade is still beside you. But you? You're not the same as you were yesterday. You're rested. You're a little ridiculous, and you're still here. You survived another day, and now another waits, but not quite yet. You stretch, you smile, you whisper something to the sword that only it would understand. And then, just before the rhythm of morning takes you again, you listen to the crickets, still singing, still here, still samurai. The night is ending, but your mind doesn't need to follow right away. Let it linger here in the soft hush of a sleeping compound, where swords are clean, robes are folded, and the only battle left is whether or not to open your eyes. Picture the glow of the paper lanterns fading into pale dawn. Feel the tatami under your fingertips, rough but familiar like an old friend. Listen to the wind outside, brushing the bamboo with fingers too gentle to wake even the youngest servant. There's no need to rise yet. No need to brace yourself for armor, for decisions, for hierarchy. Let your breath slow. Let it stretch into the corners of your body like tea spilling across a wooden tray. No rush, no pressure. Just the rhythm of breath, of stillness, of surrender to rest. Even the sword beside your bed seems quieter now, as if it too understands that peace is a kind of strength. That stillness is not weakness, it's the reward you get when the work is done, when the night is honored, and when your story is allowed to pause. You don't need to fight anything here. Not the thoughts, not the memories, not the morning. You've done enough. Now let go, let the quiet take you. Let the dreams wrap around you like your robe after a long bath. Let yourself drift. And when you wake, hours from now, soft with sleep, you'll remember what it feels like to live a warrior's day and end it like a human.